Well, it is a cool 23 degrees here today in Michigan. It is about in the second week of February here, 2021. And I thought today would be a good day to get some seeds started in my trays here. Now, I'm not going to be starting everything today that's going in my garden. Mainly today, I'm just going to be starting the peppers and onions. These do require a little bit more time to mature than, tomatoes and things like that, which generally can wait a few more weeks. But some of the pepper varieties that I'm going to be growing are like the super hot varieties, and they do take a little more time to mature, and so the bigger they are when you put them out in the garden, the better your harvest will be. If you follow along, I will go over the different things I use, the seed starting soil that I'll be using, the tray setup, how I keep the seeds warm, and there is one interesting way of planting onion seeds that I've been doing that works great that you might be interested in, and I'll walk you all through that. I'll put some timestamps down in the video description below so you can jump around the video if you like to certain parts. Okay, so this is the soil mix that I'm going to be using this year. This is the Burpee Organic Potting Mix. I did try their organic seed starting mix last year, and it was primarily the coconut coir, and it did require some nutrients a little sooner than I would have cared for. So this year I'm going to go with the potting mix, which does have a little bit of compost in it, but it is not a soil that is very high in nutrients. It rates it as a 0.12 by 0.12 by 0.12, so all very low in the nutrients, but it should still have some good drainage and everything, and I'll open this up in just a minute. But I do intend on adding some plant fertilizer to the mix as well, and the recommendation for seed starting on this is to use 2 cups per cubic foot of soil that you plan on using. So in each one of these bags there's 8 quarts. There's about 30 quarts per cubic foot of soil, so I'm going to probably add about a cup to these 2 bags of soil that I'm going to use here today. So let's get this opened up and see what it looks like here. Okay, so this stuff looks great, nice and light and fluffy. You can see it's just all small particles. Does have some perlite mixed in with it and everything. Looks like it's going to hold moisture really well. And the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to add in some of this granular fertilizer here. And per the instructions on the package, it's going to take about 1 cup mixed in with this. So I'm going to go ahead and add that now. And go ahead and mix that in really good throughout this soil here. Break up any clumps that I find in there as well. Make sure this is all mixed in there really good. Okay, now with the soil mixed well, the next thing we're going to want to do is wet the soil down a little bit before filling the trays. It'll be much easier. You never want to put your seeds in dry soil, but you don't want it soaking wet either. And so I'm going to add a little bit of water to this, and your goal is to get to the dampness where you could really squeeze it and just get a drop or 2 coming out of the soil mix. So that's what we're going to do here. I did end up putting about a total of, I think, 9 cups of water into this 16 quarts of soil, and as you can see, it's starting to like barely get a drop of water out of that when I squeeze it. And it does stay nice and clumped up, but it breaks up real easy when you rustle around in your hands. So we're going to go from there, and I'm going to start filling my seed trays now. Okay, one thing I want to mention with these trays that you're going to be putting your cell packs into, I like to try to find these ones that the bottom grid is all connected. Some of them just have like straight separate lines. These ones I found when you're bottom watering and you pour the water in there, it will disperse evenly throughout the tray. And you can get these, for just a couple dollars at your local gardening center. Even with the little dome tray on them, I buy them. It comes with this part and the dome cover, clear plastic dome cover for $2 or $3 each only. And these cell packs here, these I picked up off of Amazon, and I will include some links in the description if you're interested. But these can be broken into separate 6-packs as well. But for my purposes, I'm just going to leave them all attached, and then you can put, it'll be 72 seedlings per tray if you use this size of cell. And I'm going to go ahead and finish filling. I'm going to fill 3 of these trays. I'm just going to take and put the soil on there, kind of brush it into each cell. And then I do pack it down into each cell also. You do want it kind of nice and tight in the cells, so pack it down in there and then put a little bit more on top of it here. And once the cells are packed nice and tight, just take the excess, brush it off. This much left over. I don't think it's enough to fill another tray. In fact, I'm sure it's not, but I would probably get another half a tray out of this. So that was 16 quarts of the potting mix that filled 3 trays with 72 cells in each tray. So, all right, now on to the fun part. Okay, so now that the dirty part is over with, the seed cells are all packed, the soil's in there nice and tight, we're going to go ahead and start planting some seeds. And so just want to go over real quickly, this is the seed organizer that I use. It's not really a seed organizer. I think it's made for little beads and jewelry pieces, but bought it off of Amazon. I painted the cover black so light doesn't hit the seeds, and it comes with all these little Tic Tac type containers here that you can put your seeds in, and you can label them. It comes with little stickers and everything. It even came with some little Ziploc bags and a little thing here which is for sorting beads, but it actually works great for tapping the seeds onto the soil too. So that said, to keep track of these when you number them like this, I just started a simple spreadsheet, you know, just to keep track of what number is what. I put that on Google Docs so I don't lose it, and now I don't have 1,000 of these little seed packs laying everywhere, just the ones that I purchased this year. So one of the things I'm going to be starting today is these onions. It's the Walla Walla onions, and I do have a Utah yellow Spanish onion that I'm going to plant as well, a sweet onion, and I'm going to plant some red onions as seeds as well today. So I'm going to bring you in closer to show you what I'm doing for how to plant these seeds. And this is the part that I thought was kind of interesting. I learned this a few years ago, and it works great if you're planning on starting onions from seed. I highly recommend you try this method. Planting the onion seeds, what you want to do is basically you're going to plant multiple onions per cell here. So you can almost take the whole seed packet and put it in one of these 6-cell trays here. Because when the onion seedlings grow, they grow a very thick fibrous root, and so when you take this cell out later to plant it in the garden, you can pull the onions apart without damaging the roots, because they don't get those really thin spindly little roots and everything, and so you can separate them really easy. So you can grow a lot of onions in one cell pack of these, and so I recommend that. It works great. I've done it for the last few years. So for the onions, I like to press the soil down into the cells a little bit, and then just sprinkle about 8 to 12 seeds in each cell. At least 8 to 12. More is not going to really hurt. And after you get the seeds in there, I just take a little bit of soil and cover them up. And put my tag on here. Okay, so that's it for the onions. So I'm just going to have these 4 6-pack cells for all my onions. This will grow more than enough for what I need for my gardening purposes. But like I said, just to recap, I put about 8 to 12 seeds at least in each cell. I probably put even more than that. Just cover them with about 1/4 of an inch of soil, and this will grow in. It'll look like a little field of grass here. But once they grow nice and tall, when about the time they're ready to put out into the garden, you'll be able to just pop one of those cells out and kind of break the dirt up, and you can just pull them apart separately. They have a nice thick fibrous root. You know, they don't grow those little thin spindly little roots, and so you won't damage the roots. It's not, you don't even have to be very careful with them. You can just pull them apart and then plant them individually in your garden at the proper spacing. And I'll show you some pictures here of some onions that I grew in my garden last year, and they grew great, nice sized bulbs off them. They were the Spanish sweet onions, and they grew great. And I've been doing this method for a couple of years, and I love it. I used to use the onion sets, and I had a real problem with them. I would get a fair percentage that would never really grow a bulb. They would go to flower, and the reason for that is because onions are biennials, and that means if you left the onion in the ground for the second year, it will produce a flower. It's going to reproduce it. Second year, it's going to go to seed. So what an onion set is it's a onion that they grew from seed, and then they let it go dormant, and then you plant it again and it grows. And so if it was exposed to, you know, too cold of temperatures or whatever, it thinks it already went through a winter. It thinks when you plant it that year that it's on its second year of growth. And so sometimes they don't grow bulbs at all, or they grow small bulbs, or sometimes they just go right to flower. And so I've had great luck with the that's growing from seeds. You just got to get them started a little bit early. They do take some time to mature. It's not a fast grower from seed, but once you get them out in the garden, you know, I planted mine last year. They were probably about 6-inch greens on them. Just a little bit of white on the end, you know, no bulb forming whatsoever at the time when I planted them, and I got nice big bulbs by the end of the season. Michigan's a fairly short growing season. We're in zone 6B here. And so, you know, by the time it was time to harvest them, I had plenty of onions that were a couple inches in diameter, 2 to 3 inch in diameter at least. So that said, my onions are all set, and so we'll move on to planting the peppers now. Okay, so for the peppers, the planting method is a little bit different. You're going to put a little dimple in each cell and plant your seeds. Now, some people like to plant 2 seeds per cell to ensure that they get at least 1 plant per cell. Personally, I don't really do that anymore. Usually germination rates are good enough. I always plant a little bit of extra anyways to either give away to friends or sell. And so I just plant 1 per cell, especially when growing some of these super hot varieties, because the seeds aren't cheap really for them. You probably pay about $5 for 10 seeds, and so I'm not putting 2 seeds per cell on those. But basically what I do, I just take a Sharpie marker or something of that size, and I just put a little dimple in each cell, maybe about a 1/4 inch max depth. Even 1/8 of an inch would be good. And you can just go ahead and do that to your whole tray. As I said, make sure your soil is compacted well into these cells to start with. That's going to make a huge difference down the road. And I do recommend using something with a little bit larger of a diameter to put your dimples in here, because it will be easier to see if you're using something to drop the seeds into the hole. If you just put a hole that's just barely big enough to drop the seed into, sometimes you're looking in there wondering, did the seed drop down into the hole or not? And so by using something a little bit bigger, you'll actually be able to see the seed in the hole, which I prefer myself. Okay, so I got all the little dimples put in here, but before I put the seeds in the cells, I just want to mention one thing. Like I use this spreadsheet to keep track of, you know, the number of seed, you know, what seeds are in what cell here on this. But you can also use this to keep track of, you know, you can use it to do a simple tally on how many plants you want to start pre-season and everything. You can put any other information you want about the plant, how tall it gets, you know, how far it needs to be spaced from other plants, etc. I even started a tab in the spreadsheet that has my garden layout. I use raised beds, and so I kind of do the square foot gardening method. And so, you know, I figure out where I'm going to plant everything right on this spreadsheet. And then when I go out in my garden, I plant it there. I don't have to worry about putting these little tags and markers in my garden, because I know where everything's at, because it's backed up online on this spreadsheet. You can be out there planting your stuff and pull it up on your phone and then confirm where you're planting everything, because tags and things blow away, they fade from the sun, and you know, animals dig in your garden and whatever. And so you might lose the tags, and then come down the road you might not know what it is. So, you know, if you're interested, give it a try. It's simple. I'll show you a couple screenshots of what I got here, and you know, it's free. It's on Google Drive. It's backed up online on the cloud. It doesn't cost you anything. So consider that. All right, that said, let's get on to planting some peppers. I'm going to plant about 27 different varieties here, more of some, less of others. Some of them I'm not even going to be growing. I'm going to either sell them or give them away to friends. But I do like to have a few varieties as backups. You never know what's going to germinate. You're growing them indoors for a period of time. If something dies, you'd want to have something to fill that spot in your garden. And so I'm always growing extras. Like I said, I either give them away to friends or sell them if I can. The varieties I'm going to be planting, I'm going to plant Moruga Scorpion, Carolina Reapers, Scotch Bonnets, Fish Peppers, Calabrian, Gachagaro, Golden Cayenne, Trinidad Sweet, Mugla, El Oro Ecuador, El Rito, Tabasco, Ghost, Ají Charapita, Orange Habaneros, Red Habaneros, Serranos, Hungarian Yellow Wax Peppers, Gangbao, Jalapenos, Thai peppers, the big Thai hybrids, Ají Limos, red cayennes, the long slim variety, Alma paprika, bird's eye pepper, and the Thai dragon chilies as well. So those are some of the varieties I'm going to be planting. I did purchase these seeds from Refining Fire Chilies. They have an excellent selection of the super hots. If you're interested in the super hot peppers, I highly recommend them. Some of their, you know, common variety jalapenos and things like that, like the serranos, you know, you can get those elsewhere and you'll get a lot more seeds for the money. But for the super hots, they do come highly recommended on a lot of the pepper forums on Facebook and everything. I think this guy's name's Jim Duffy, and he has a really good reputation with the pepper growers on the online Facebook groups. So look them up, Refining Fire Chilies, if you Google it, and their seeds are about $5 or so for 10 seeds. But he did send me, I ordered 8 varieties, and he sent me some bonus seeds as well. So he sent me 5 different varieties that I didn't order, you know, so I'm going to grow some of those and try them out this year too. And so here we go. So I'm just going to put my seeds onto this little seed sorter. You can either tap them in the hole, or I'd like to take a pair of tweezers and kind of pop one into each hole here. With these super hot pepper varieties, I don't like to handle the seeds really, because they'll get on your fingers and you'll forget, and you'll touch your eyes or something, and you're going to be on fire. So be careful when handling the seeds. The seeds are one of the parts that contain the heat in peppers, so keep that in mind. So once the seeds are in the holes, you can just take and press a little bit of soil over the top. Peppers don't have to be very deeply buried into the soil. 1/8 to 1/4 inch should be fine. And again, don't forget to tag them. And then you're just going to repeat that process for all the rest of your seeds. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll show you what's next. Okay, so I got all my seeds planted, have them all marked. You got to make sure you tag them well. Pepper plants, when they sprout till they get large, you're not going to be able to tell them apart. So make sure you tag them well. I have either a whole pack marked or each row if I planted only 3 of a certain variety. And so just make sure you tag them well. Like I said, you'll never be able to identify them until they grow up a bit. So that said, the soil's nice and damp. We need to keep it that way, and the best way to do that is with one of these plastic dome lids. These usually come with the bottom tray. You can get them separately as well, but I got the kit with the bottom and top tray for like $2 or $3 at the gardening center. And I like to use these popsicle sticks here because they're short. I cut a popsicle stick in half and use that for each one of my tags, because as you see, this dome isn't very high, and so I don't want those too tall of a tag, and it's going to interfere with the lid here. So I like to be able to put the lid on nice and securely. And once you get those covered, the next thing you're going to need is some warmth. And the best way to do that, if you have a cooler basement, is going to be to get yourself one of these heat mats here. I think they go for about $10 or $11. You can pick it up on Amazon for about $10 or $11. I'll put a link in the description. This one fits one tray itself. They also have longer ones or larger ones that you can put multiple trays on, depending on how many seedlings you're doing here. But if you use one of these heat mats, you do want to use a heat control, a temperature controller as well, because this thing will just run nonstop. You know, it could get too hot, you know, cause overheat problems, whatever. So the best way to do it is use one of these controllers here. You plug the heat mat into the bottom of the controller, and then you plug the controller in the wall, and you take the probe and you stick it in the soil, and it will monitor the soil temperature and keep the temperature exactly what you have it set at there. And they work really well. It doesn't hurt to insulate around the thing a little bit. I have a video on that if you check through my videos. But at any rate, you do need some bottom warmth for these, or else it's going to take a very long time to germinate, or they may not germinate at all. Some of the super hot varieties can take up to a month to germinate. So without some bottom heat, for sure, it's going to take a long time. So make sure you use some bottom heat on these. If you don't have a heat mat, one way I found out that you can get some free warmth is just to simply take these trays and put them up on top of your ductwork. If you have a forced air heat system in your basement, just put them up on top of the ductwork. And you know, in the winter time, your heat's going to come on pretty frequently, and so it will keep it warm enough for these seeds to germinate. I've done it before, and it works very well. But once your seeds sprout, you're going to need some form of light for them. I'm going to be growing these a little longer in the house. I'm going to grow them till they're 6 or 8 inches tall at least. And so I have some sets of T5 fluorescent lights, which work good. You could grow a plant to, you know, full size with those lights, really. So those are what I will be using beginning to end. But if you're just growing them for a short period in the house, any kind of plant seedlings that you're going to be putting out within 6-8 weeks outside, you could use fluorescent shop lights. They work great, and they don't throw off much heat, so you can keep them really close to the tops of the plants. Now, like a pepper plant, ideally the plant's going to stay only that tall. If it's grown with enough light, it's going to stay only 1.5 inches or so until it gets its first true set of leaves. And that's not the first set of leaves that grow. It's the second set of leaves that grow, or it's true leaves. And so if you're not providing enough light, you'll know, because the plant will grow tall. So again, make sure you get a good source of light. Don't use a windowsill. It's never good enough. Last year, I grew some of my pepper varieties. I grew red habaneros. I grew them in the ground in my raised beds. And I grew them hydroponically. And the way I do them hydroponically was the direct water column, which is just the buckets full of the nutrients, the hydroponic nutrients, and the plants suspended in it. And I kind of had them on my patio, and I really didn't check on the nutrient levels or nothing. I just let them go. Added more nutrients when the level got low, and that was it. I didn't check pH. I didn't check the, you know, the nutrient levels in the bucket or anything like that. I just added more as it depleted it. And the habanero in the hydroponic setup system grew, it outproduced my habanero that was in my soil in the raised garden bed. And so I was a little surprised by that, but it was the only variety that I did that with. So this year, what I'm going to do is I'm going to plant some of these varieties. I'm going to plant them in a container in soil and in a container hydroponically, side by side, so they're getting the same light, same exposure, same everything. It's just going to be a different grow medium. and I'm going to compare the results with multiple varieties of peppers this year. I want to see if this was just a fluke last year that I ended up with a better harvest from that, or what here. So, you know, if you're interested in seeing the progress on that, all these peppers are going to be grown outside, whether it's in my raised garden beds, in a soil container, or a hydroponic container. So if you want to see the progress on that and check out my hydroponic system that's going to be used for outdoors, be sure to follow along. Once the weather gets warmed up here, I'll post some videos along the way of the progress of these once they start germinating. But be sure and subscribe, check back for future updates on these plants. I'll be posting more gardening videos as well, not just the peppers. So check back. If you enjoyed this video, please click the like button, and I'll see you on the next one. Have a good day.